Oh, chat, do you guys want to read through this too? Did any of you guys see this tweet? This long ass thread. Did you guys see this? This thread is something else, man. It is a 25-part thread. Wait, this is part 3? Oh my god, chat, this is a whole saga. We need to read the whole thing. Where's part 2? Where is part 2? I need to find part 2. This is part 1. 1 out of 19. Chat, this whole thread is someone who is claiming that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is rigged. Let's read through this thread and see what Mr. Yusei has to say. Okay, I'm going to translate the tweets, but I can read it in French, so I'll be able to correct if there's anything wrong about it. After several years in the game, and especially in competition, I came to a clear conclusion. Everything is rigged from A to Z at the competitive level, and the big players obviously have an attitude of complicity with them. By that I mean it's strange, in a game where chance is a pretty big factor, that we always find the same guys in Top Cut. At first I thought it was simple cheating, but it obviously goes beyond that. Cheating could only work against unsophisticated players.
What do you do?
So maybe cheating could help win the first rounds, but then how to explain their consistency beyond and in the Top Cut? Good question. The answer is simple. Everything is programmed. The MUs, the opponents, often puppet opponents, by the way. Even the scenario of certain featuring, because that is obviously what interests the organizers, we need attractive posters. Who cares about 2 top randoms on the stream? People want to see big names, like yesterday with the 29 remake between Gabriel Susi and Samir Bakari. To do so, these big names must be there. He's saying that it has to be rigged because it's always the top players are always playing on feature match. It's like football. We all prefer to watch Real versus Bayern than Clermont versus Metz. Except that in football, despite obvious tricks too, the performances of the players are much more authentic because they are not based on luck or little. Interesting. So watch out. The big players are not bad at the game. They are very good and skilled, and it's logical. The organizers need good players to run their merry-go-round. And besides, I think that the rigging only intervened late in the competitive landscape of Yu-Gi-Oh! The events were much smaller before and much less publicized. Very good players have emerged and grown with the game. Suddenly, with this, lots of good players, the organizers ended up building a mafia. There is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Mafia! Always for the purpose of profit. We live in a world where the majority of people need to idolize and live through others. It's also a way to display a showcase for the game, especially since most of these players make a living from Yu-Gi-Oh! And create content on it. Let me tell you, chat, I can count on 2 hands the number of people who make a living from creating content in Yu-Gi-Oh! I can guarantee it. I can guarantee it. It would still be funny if the influencers do not top, right? It would give the game a negative image. Also, I would also like to point out that with the exception of exactly Joshua Schmidt, Yu-Gi tubers don't top events. You have players you never see them locally or are involved in other activities. However, they still hit or even win big tournaments. Don't talk to me about preparation. No need for preparation when everything is arranged for you. He's literally out here saying that they do not prepare for these events. They just show up and top. Besides, not sure that these players are aware of being puppets for the organizers. This remains to be determined. But it's so easy for an organizer to rig pairings, make them avoid trap matches and unwinnable matchups. A YCS is 12 rounds where you're only entitled to 2 poor defeats over 2 days. Remember that this is a game subject to chance, and not only in terms of card draws, but also the opponent and their deck. He's saying that the organizers are taking the good players and pairing them into favorable matchups. When you look at the reports of high players, it's usually only against meta or really weak decks in the first round. Strangely, they never face Quagmire decks, not too sure what that's supposed to mean. This kind of deck not at all anticipated, so they're never facing anti-meta strategies. They're only ever facing the decks they've prepared for, or they are facing bad decks. They are never facing the good rogue decks. Strange too. The big players rarely compete in rounds, or it's unless it's for a feature. How not to doubt the honesty of pairings? Too many things converge. And it seems so clear in a consumerist society. We live in a society of consumers that I blame myself for not having realized it before. It's like the openings of influencers with giga-loaded displays, as you will have once in 20. He's basically saying that influencers get rigged boxes too. The theory goes even deeper. I've been playing too long to know that a large majority of parameters are out of control in tournaments to believe in the fable of no, they're just too skilled, that's why. Once again, their skill is real, but even with that, when it doesn't want it, it doesn't want it. What that means is when it's not your day, it's not your day. It basically like the rough translation in French. Oh, we got a clown emoji, except that it always goes in their favor. For me, there are tournaments where I'm just going to lose a game to the variance and then fall behind on a weird deck that's going to screw me up simply if I come across the worst matchup for my deck. Even if I have a level, I am not a magician. Oh, he's saying like even if I'm good at the game, I'm not a magician. So he's basically saying I will eventually hit a bad matchup, yet the pro players never hit bad matchups. And then he says, I will stop there. I could elaborate much more, but Twitter is not the ideal medium for long monologues. However, this is where I have the most chance of hitting things. However, they said they are going to stop there, and then they simply didn't. Let's find part 2. Second thread of the Truman Show Yu-Gi-Oh! 1 out of 20. Let's keep going. I'm going to respond here in a global way to the dozens of messages received basically to his part 1. First, I suspected your reactions. A random arrives and comes to tell you that everything is fake. It sure makes you feel like a jerk. But now remember, and he said it makes you feel like a taré. Taré is more like an idiot than a jerk. But now remember the 5-year-old child you were. How did he react to Santa Claus? I assume he means how did you react as a child to finding out that Santa Claus was not real? Very bad, I suppose. At first you struggled to accept the information, but eventually you were forced to see that it was all a lie. Well, it's the same here. Me too. The first time I said to myself, this is grotesque. Basically what he's saying, chat, is he's saying you have now consumed the red pill. I will now show you what it means to be outside the matrix. Yet none of you have been able to dismantle my arguments. Some said, lol, it's too easy to dismantle your arguments without actually giving any counter argument. Hey, maybe he's right. Did no one give him any counter argument? No, skill and deck building aren't everything, especially in 2K22. All deck lists are within our reach, and there are many tutorials and explanations here and there to progress. The level should therefore be more and more homogeneous. What he's saying by this is because you can net deck and everyone has a chance to, you know, play the same deck and like the best deck, then, you know, the skill level should be right about equal because everyone's playing an optimized list. Yet it is clearly not, and this is where the deception becomes glaring. If everyone can have a well-built deck via net decking and improve their understanding of the game via tutorials, why don't new champions emerge? Let's ignore the fact that this last YCS, the person who won the YCS was someone who had never won a YCS before, and that happens very often. We are crowning new YCS champions almost every single season. There's always, you know, like 2 or 3 YCSs where you'll have, you know, someone who has previously won a YCS, but for the most part, we do crown new YCS champions, which is a counter argument, which is what he was asking for. Let's keep going. Why, given the number of informed players with equivalent decks, it is always the same ones who win? In a card game, this is not an FPS or a fighting game. The argument here is that the same players constantly top when the game is luck-based. Well, I mean, it's luck-based to an extent, but not that much, you know? You may be more skilled than your opponent or more intelligent, but if your hand is not strong enough, you'll lose and that's it. I mean, at some point, it's given to any moron to know where to interrupt X or X deck, okay? Everyone knows the choke points. If there were 0 tricks, the tops would have to be more mixed with new faces each time. But the average person prefers to believe that a guy like Joshua Schmidt is legit because when it's really big that he is helped because bankable. Oh, they're saying that it's really weird that he's being helped because he's like someone that they can profit off of. I will be told that he was scammed in Dortmund to argue against. Except that no, the drama was surely planned on stream. We don't forget that it's a show above all, and we had to please the Italian community for the final. What the fuck, dude? It was rigged from the start, chat. By the way, the Italian Flunder player. The guy has a super common deck list. No problem so far, but it's a very bricky deck. Yet he tops all the time with it. But calm. There's zero cheats or arrangements with the opponents. There is no cheating. Yes. I remind you that topping a YCS requires 10 wins out of 12 games. I simulated hands with this deck list. I had a dozen of dead hands, but apparently a good player deck builds well. If it still was an isolated top, you say that to yourself that that's okay. The RNG was with him. But no, he tops all the time. The bigger it is, the better it goes, as they say. He's talking not even about the player that was in the finals. He's talking about the one that I believe topped every European YCS this season with Flu. Then, huge argument, but precisely, I find that Yu-Gi-Oh!, unlike many other games and disciplines, is a game where the gap between players is not so big. I have already beaten top players locally, didn't feel like they were better. Interesting. I've lost against beginners before because they just had a great hand. I've already seen big names being washed away by neophytes. I assume this means newer players. Something you would never see in chess, Call of Duty, or Smash, to name examples. You would never see a noob beat a Call of Duty professional player. The difference is that this is just straight up lying. You see this in Smash all the time. How many times? You cannot even count the number of times where at a big tournament, some rookie player cooks Hungry Box or some shit like that. That shit happens all the time. And no, this is only possible in a game where the luck factor exists and greatly influences the course of a game. So with that in mind, consistent tops are inconsistent! Some have mentioned the time and the involvement in the game. I have just dismantled this, and I will add the CDF, which is French Nationals, with only 6 months of play.
What do you do?
Find me other disciplines where this is possible. I can guarantee you there are many other video games where someone can no-life the game for 6 months and then top an event, or even win an event. Fuck, Pac! His first YCS was the Remote Duel YCS, and he won it! Faker won Worlds after 6 months? True, that's actually really true. And concerning this player, I don't deny his level, or he means his skill, but I strongly bet that the organizers said to themselves, hey, we're going to create a nice story. That of the guy who tops in 6 months of play. He is the real Yugi Moto. No, I'm not crazy. I'm just using my critical mind, and I dare you to question what I'm given. You are free to want to stay locked in this illusion. You can take the blue pill if you want, but here's where it gets a little bit worse. They made a part 3, 1 out of 25. The Truman Show Yu-Gi-Oh! Part 3. Again, many messages received since part 2 of my explanation. I will try to answer the numerous arguments proposed in this new thread. Also, I responded to his last thread. Let's see if he responded to what I said. What comes back the most is the knowledge of the big players. Okay, are we talking about Marcus P riding on the French championship with Rika? Like all his opponents, known or not, must have read his cards. No, they are far from knowing everything. Oh, he's basically saying that Marcus Patel, the one who won with Rika Sun Avalon, every single round his opponents had to read his cards and didn't know what they were, meaning that it gave him an edge. I've played rogue decks myself against good players. They were lost in the beginning, so no sorry, it's a big lie that they're prepared for everything. For every matchup, and that they know everything. You're literally saying these pro players are not prepared for these matchups, therefore they don't know everything? What the fuck does that even mean? Is he saying that, oh, you say that it's because they're better prepared, but sometimes they had to read? Why do you think Marcus Patel won? Yeah, he's a good player, but he also won because a lot of his opponents weren't prepared for the matchup. As opposed to if they were prepared for the matchup, they probably would have had a much better chance at beating him. I think he just, like, self-reported. I am an average player. I have a few tops in regionals, a lot of locals wins, and yet when I face these famous pros, the difference felt as almost non-existent. I can absolutely confirm this. When you play against a pro player, you don't feel in the moment like you are being played circles around. It's the minute things that make the difference. It's not always that obvious that they're playing circles around you, but the small things that they do differently genuinely make the difference. Once again, even if I took up chess, even in 5 years, I would be unable to take a game from a master. In Yu-Gi-Oh! It's different, except for even hands, but over the entire tournament, you will inevitably have hands that die to one interruption. Yes, that is why there is a game 2 and a game 3. If your deck is well built, you will not brick that much. As a result, the conclusion is obvious here. There is not only cheating, stacking, and rule sharking, but also outside help with the pairings. It always takes 10 lead between 2 rounds in YCS. Oh, he's saying why it takes 10 minutes between 2 rounds? Why it takes so long? Because you have to make sure of several things. The reason why it takes a long time between rounds is because they are rigging the matchups. You need to make sure of the following: that 2 big players do not compete except if they're on a feature match, that a big player does not fall on a bad matchup, that we find funny or exciting matchups for the feature, like Hello Mystic Burn versus Runic, Mine Burn versus Runic Mine, round 12 in Dortmund. So they're forcibly pairing funny matchups. They are forcibly not pairing pro players unless they want to put them on the feature. Oddly, anti-meta or outsider decks often find themselves clashing, just to be sure that they eliminate each other before having to send them on top to big players when it becomes difficult to perform pairing maneuvers. A very recent example, YCS Pasadena. Flunder versus Sprite in top 16. Coincidentally, the last 2 guys who weren't playing Tirishizu. The organizers want to promote the latest maps, the latest sets is probably what he means, the latest cards, so it would be stupid for a Flunder or Sprite to win. Counter argument: the brackets are made at the top, at the beginning of Top Cut. He doesn't understand the tournament format. By the way, when they interviewed the Sprite after his top 8 win, he said he knew he had no chance of winning. Me, I think he knew stuff and he had a script to keep. Hence his very bad game 3 in top 4. He knew he was going to lose because they needed him to have to follow the script. Same for the Flunder player in the finals of Dortmund. He made a few small misplays that even the commentators noted. Or the finalist from Minneapolis, also a Flunder player. It was still plus big. Oh, it was bigger, is what he means. Above all, Flunder should not win against tier. Brothel is even more staged. He's saying like this is just like a. Like, when you start a sentence with fuck, it's like saying, fuck, it's even more staged than wrestling, but you walk into it, it's, oh, c'est ouf. It's like, it's insane, is basically what he's saying. So when I see guys telling Joshua, don't worry, champion, you'll win the next YCS instead of trying to win it on their own, that says it all. What the fuck? People want to have heroes, guys to support. Human beings are like that. A massive sheep for a few shepherds. People like to be guided, to follow, to support, instead of doing things on their own. Yeah, sheeple! The proof with your outraged reactions elsewhere while I dismantle your arguments one by one. It hurts you too much to imagine that the high level is rigged. What? No! Strange though. Then, beyond the desire to offer a spectacle, the organizers want one thing: to make you believe that this is a largely level skill-based game to keep you in the game. You must have the illusion of a margin of progress. But what progress? If you open a hand that dies to 2 interruptions, you may have 180 IQ. What are you gonna do? Real. Take the test at home. Take a DL, a deck list that topped recently, and do some hands. The number of dead or barely playable hands is quite substantial. You may be very good. If you get double evenly at the end of the battle, what are you going to do? There are too many bullshit situations in Yu-Gi-Oh! To believe in consistent tops because it's mostly luck. Counter argument. Allow me to propose a counter argument to what was just said. The odds of opening double evenly are smaller than your odds of bricking. I would like to point that out. But this player's argument for whether or not you win a duel or lose a duel is entirely based on whether or not you draw a good opening hand. What if you draw your opening hand and it's not that good, but your opponent draws their opening hand and it's also not that good? Well, now, would you look at that, Jimmy? Yes, playing a hand to its full potential takes skill. I agree 100%, but then again, an average player like me with a good hand will always beat a top player with an average hand. I do not agree with this at all. I genuinely think that a player who knows how to make the most out of an average hand is where the skill comes into play. Most average players with a good hand aren't actually like going to play the hand optimally. They will play the one YGO Pro replay combo that they've memorized, and then the moment that board gets cracked, they do not know how to follow up. And that is where you make the differentiation between a good player and an average player. I've seen people compare Yu-Gi-Oh to chess in terms of difficulty and strategy. I don't agree with this. Yu-Gi-Oh and chess are two very different games. Bunch of eggs. Bande de ouf. Oh, bunch of idiots, basically. Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't even come close to chess, correct? Yes, it's a strategy game, but you're hugely limited by your hand. You don't have 1,000 options. This guy seems to really believe like your opening hand is what dictates whether or not you win or lose. Oh, now we've tagged Pac. So no, I don't believe in fables of multiple champions like Joshua Schmidt or Pac. That they are strong, yes, of course, they are, and they are more than me. That they can still be so successful, no, stop messing around. Ah, yes, for those who compare with poker. That's me! It just has nothing to do with it. Ah, I'm going to ignore your argument. You can afford to have a disgusting hand in poker. If you're good at mind games or know how to go to bed... Oh, it says c'est couché. He's saying, like, if you know when to fold, that's good. Yu-Gi-Oh, if you brick, you get fucked. So he's literally saying in poker, you have the opportunity to fold and you can bluff. Well, good sir, I will have you know that if all you do is have bad hands in poker, you can be the best at bluffing. Ain't no fucking way you're winning shit. The funny thing with poker, in poker, yes, you can bluff, but there is a level of skill in knowing whether or not your opponent is bluffing or not. Good players will be able to read you and know whether or not you're bluffing. I am asked for proof. I would like to give some, but excuse me for not having access to the small papers of the organizers. And for me, there is no need for proof in front of the evidence. The evidence speaks for itself. I do not need proof. The problem is that this is very difficult to make someone who is matrixed listen to reason. Get out of the matrix. Take the red pill. Wake up. Sheeple. Go tell a North Korean that he lives in a dictatorship. He thinks he lives in the best country in the world. Yu-Gi-Oh is North Korea, chat. And he's tagging everyone. Zulu, Susi, Nesh, Trif, Farfa, Team APS, 5th rate duelist, Vlad. Cat's out of the bag. I only top economic and pander to the Korean fan base. True. Confirmed. Dude, this was a ride. Mr. Yusei, I would like to invite you to come on my stream and we can debate about this. I will debate you about this. In French, I speak the language, my guy. Let me know, Mr. Yusei YGO, with proof that this is you. I will debate you on stream in French.